So before the break, I introduced a program that demonstrates loading data while we scroll. I will also discuss it the part like that is asking for the data from web server. And it became apparent, like just because it is using REST protocol that doesn't have any history on the server side, we really have to ask for the same page size each time. Otherwise, we will get data inconsistency because server will figure out starting point of your data, assuming that previous pages have exactly the same size as current page. Otherwise, it won't be able to solve this problem, right? So for this reason, if we use the REST protocol to load the data, there's no other choice. It has to be fixed page size. If it is loading data from database, this could be different, obviously, because different interface. But this part is not in the code, and it's not covered in this course as well. If you want to learn it, welcome. Developer.android.com probably has this information. So let's start from the top, actually. We already looked at the part at the bottom when we have information exchange with the server. And now let's look from the opposite side and go in down direction to see where, how it connects. Because it will be easier this way. I know because I rewrote the code, so I'm familiar with what is inside. So let's go up to the level, top level of the app. So main activity is calling app root screen, so entire piece. So I'm going to app root screen, and it is in UI, app root screen, this entire piece. App root screen has scaffold in it. Scaffold is holding this piece together with this piece together. There is no floating buttons, there is no toolbar. Above this scaffold, we ask for view model, right? So we call view model function that will create view model if it doesn't exist, or find if it exists. And this view model is repos view model that is defined here. Repos, okay, not here. It is in UI, obviously. Repos view model. Repos view model provides data to this page, and it has one data field, which is flow of paging data of a repo. It is just data type. It's a type of the object that stores data for the one element. It has nothing to do with a repository in terms of providing data, but it is repository on GitHub, so it is data about repository on the GitHub. So repo, it is just piece of data that came in a list from GitHub. So in view model, we have an, oops, I clicked wrong piece. In view model, we have a flow of paging data of repo. Okay. So it is our flow. It means data is inserted when it comes, right, and we reflect it. But it's not just flow of list. This way, it will be just static list, and it contains object which is wrapper around this list that is paging data. It contains paging information. And it's also paging data is used to trigger this data load. This is how this magic works. This flow comes from a repository. We ask for pager. So pager, it's an object provided by a repository that I will explain later. And this repository contains flow. remember that flow may need some tasks to perform, like previously it was data transformation. Obviously, this also has some tasks. In this case, to caching data, like in memory, because when we scroll, we have to have data loaded at the head of the time, so it is cached. And this task needs to be executed in the background, in some scope. So this is using view model scope because it's about the view and it's not stored in the database. So this part, cached in, provides instruction what scope to use to do these loading tasks into memory before it is displayed. So in this case, a repository gives us a pager object that contains reference to the flow. So in the end, we have a flow, right? That is stored here. So flow, it is flow of paging data. So let's see how this flow is used in the GUI. Going back to our app root screen, a view model, and this is repos flow. So I picked this flow and assign it here. Right. Next, this is a flow, but in order to trigger screen, we need to have some object that is able to trigger it. I remember it was previously we had state object, and in this case, it is not state object, it is object lazy paging items. Lazy paging items, it is specific type that can be used in lazy column, maybe lazy row as well, I don't know, most likely, right? Lazy paging items, and regular lazy row can use them as a source of data. And when it is used as a source of data, lazy column is signaling it or calling methods on it, I don't know, so some API use it, when we scroll. So this is how communication happens. Luckily, we don't have to set up these events at the time of the scrolling. So it is pretty much automatic in the sense of we give this type lazy repo items to a column, lazy column, and it calls methods of it when we scroll. So this also lazy column paging items contains error messages that happens during loading. So what we need to take care of for displaying those errors if they happen. But we don't need to call any kind of triggering during scrolling, luckily, because this would be a complicated task. So let's see how it is implemented. These lazy repo items collected as paging items from the flow, so this is not flow anymore, is given to repo screen. See, it's passed to repo screen. A difference between app root screen, it contains toolbar on top and everything. But repo screen, it is just this piece. So magic happens inside of repo screen. So let's open repo screen. In the repo screen, we receive the same lazy paging items. Android type is defined in lazy paging items compose. And for the lazy column, as you see, it is the same lazy column as before. It's not specifically paging lazy column. So we create lazy column, and as before, we use items, and this is repos items count. Why it is here? Well, previously we didn't have count, right? It was just items and lambda function that is creating the item, right? And now it is count received with the data for some reason. Yeah, okay. Yes?
How does it know how many, how does it know that how many objects are incoming to the count for itself? Is it constantly fetching?
Let's think about it. This is, no, it's not constantly fetching because, okay. Repos is lazy paging item, so it contains the data. It is already fetched. So it's already fetched. It contains list in it. Let's think about this for a moment. Okay. Repos item count. This is definitely how many of them, right? Yeah. And this part is repeated. Index is probably starting with whatever, index 0, up to count not included. And what is this? Using index to pick it from that list, perhaps, right? From that list. And question mark, because for that index, maybe there's nothing, because index could be bigger than the list. So, question mark and let. How let works? It defines, this would be object that is selected. Repos, what is before let is given into lambda function. Yeah. So this would be object, what is selected, and we call repository item that is creating this piece that probably contains card, and card receives index and object. Yeah, so this is creating the list. Other things are taking much care of arrows or current state. So let's see. What we have on top. Repos load state. This repos object contains not just list, it also contains state. Right? So it could be load state refresh, right? And no. This is the state of refreshing. That could be either loading or error. Right? Load state error, loading or error. If it is loading, I'm displaying loading item. If it is error, I'm displaying error item. And this is just some functions that I defined to display it. And arrow item also contained button that is retry. So when we click on that, it will try to reload. It's called repos retry. This repos object contains some methods that are triggered during scrolling, and there is option to trigger retry on it. Yeah. So this is where it is displayed. It is displayed in the list, right? Because this part is inside of lazy column. So it is not instead of lazy column, but it is in the lazy column. Why? Because it could be loaded, then boom, error, so it will display error.
So it's not on top of the list?
No, it is in the list. Yeah. What is this one? When append load state. Okay, this is variable assignment. There is also append state.
What does that do?
Oh, good point. 1 second. Okay. Two kinds of errors. One error when we have a list and we add additional item, but there is error for that. So that would be append state. And another error when we tried to create a list right away, load state right away. We are not appending, we are refreshing. It could be also that error. So I click refresh and error happens, so it will be at the top. It will be at the top of the list if a list ever comes. If it doesn't come, it will be instead of the list. Just because it is at the top, right?
So this is only initiated if there's an error?
It is error or state during refresh.
Yeah.
Okay. Then, during scrolling, also error may happen because we scroll. And in this case, it will appear at the bottom of the list, which is logical during scrolling, or it cannot scroll. And this would be append state. That can be also loading or error. And error will be displayed at the bottom in this case. So we can imitate that to see how it works. How to imitate it? Hopefully it works, because last time I checked it, it did work, but I checked it a year ago. So let's see. I open our terminal. Where is our terminal? Okay, not terminal, settings. Here it is. And what I want to do, no, it's not this. It is pull from the top. And even more, I do airplane mode. This is supposed to turn off network connection, right? I'm trying to create error artificially. Airplane mode. Now, if I click refresh, I should create an issue, right? So let's try. Okay. Did it happen issue? Yeah, it did, but it's not what I want, actually. It happened, it did insert at the top, but not instead of the screen. Maybe it's better to improve it, right?
Yeah. But if you look at the message, right? You see the message, error.localized message. There's not, the string is empty, correct?
What do you mean?
The string right there. The message equals error.localized message. Below it, above.
I have no idea what you're talking.
This piece. Right, yeah, that.
Okay.
The string is empty. Is that why it's not showing?
No. So let's think about it. Error localized message. No. This is question mark column. How it works? If it's nothing, show empty.
Oh, if it's nothing, it shows.
We would better just type word error instead of it. So it is actually showing something, which is here.
Which is this?
Yeah.
Okay.
So definitely it's not the best behavior. It should probably show instead of it, right? But it does come up here on refresh. Maybe we should put it on the bottom if refresh. It's kind of ugly. All right, so let's turn off this thing, to turn on this back and see behavior. So it shows on top, but it doesn't scroll up, so we don't really know. Okay, good to know. So I want to do airplane mode. Oops, what it is? Back. Try again. It loaded, it fixed it, right? So logic works, but it's kind of in the wrong place. So we may think how to display it better. And next, I want to do, again, I want to turn on airplane mode and scroll again to see if it shows up stuff at the bottom. So airplane mode on. And now if I scroll, and now next time when it runs out of, when it wants to send request, it will fail and it will show. It will be somewhat after 60, right? Because it tries to load 60 immediately. And now it is loading state we saw and timeout message, right? So it sent request, didn't get response, and this is error message, timeout. So this part is, I would say, perfect place, right? At the bottom. But refresh is kind of in the wrong place. It tries to put it somewhere in the beginning of the list, and in order to see error message, we have to scroll. So definitely this is an issue. I will think about it, how to resolve it. It's probably not difficult at all.
Just have to do the placement.
Or some kind of pop-up box, probably. It probably makes sense.
That would be better.
Yeah. When refresh fails, pop-up happens. Okay, it should be a pop-up box. Because at the bottom, maybe I'm not at the bottom, right? I will not see it if I click refresh this way. During scrolling, yeah, I will see it because I'm scrolling. But during refresh, if it is at the bottom, I won't see it if it's there. So it should be a pop-up box. Yeah, I will think about it, but not during lesson. Yeah. Okay, question?
Yes. For the message itself, if you scroll down, it says timeout, right?
Uh-huh.
My question is, how does it know what to print particularly in this case? Did you?
It is this one.
So localized message is already predetermined, right?
Yeah.
Basically what to say.
Yes. This arrow comes from refresh load state arrow, and refresh load state arrow define it somewhere in the system. Okay. I didn't assign it at all.
Okay, that's right.
So if this part is null, it will display empty string.
Yes, yeah.
So it's better just to say loading error, right? If it is null, it will display loading error. Maybe oops, and extract string resource. So it will be string resource loading error. Now, a GUI, it's kind of okay, but there is still magic where this stuff is coming from, right?
Yeah, I was about to ask exactly that.
Yeah.
The cards, how did you make them and space them properly as they are?
Okay, card. You see, it is card is created through the loop. Where it is? Yeah, this loop.
This loop right
And index. So I'm using index to pick item, and it's called repository item. Index is given as a parameter, and it is displayed here. And this is repo came from the list. So let's find this repository item. A repository item, it's a card. Yes, it's a card that contains row. In row, we have index +1, because index starts from 0, I need to have a first one. To string for the text. And this is a column. In this column, I have a text In the data field, I have name and description. This is how it is. I think it's brute force. Yeah.
This is pretty good.
Yeah. I remember playing with it, but it was a year ago, so I don't really remember what I changed it from the original.
So this is what defines what it should look like, which is fine. But how did you attach this, what to display from whatever it's been fetching from?
Yeah. You mean where this
Where's the data attaching, basically?
data attaching?
It says, like, how do you,
Okay, it is picking data from repo object, right?
yeah,
Uh,
that's what it's got.
yes. And repo object itself is defined right here.
Okay.
So it has a name and description in it.
So you already defined it previously.
Yeah. And this is coming from JSON. JSON field contains full name.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I use name. This is how it is related.
Understood.
Okay. And there is also repositories in between, so that is not explained yet. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's look up a step that is missing. It is repository. This is also kind of mysterious when you see first time, but when we look through, like walk through, it is less mysterious. I remember that we have view model. View model is has repository injected, and repository has the method get pager. Originally, I thought that maybe a method get flow makes more sense in the repository. But later, I look up documentation from developandroid.com, and they did have piece of code on the screen, not entire example, but piece of the code, where repository has a method get pager. So I thought maybe for some internal reason, it should be this. And so I created, for this reason, I created repository with get repos pager, because because of description on developerandroid.com. Original code from the textbook didn't have repository at all. It was quite cluttered. So I rewrote it according to developerandroid.com. Yeah. Yeah. So for some reason, it's perhaps organizational, I don't know. It's not get flow, it is get pager. And flow, it is part of the pager. So let's open that repository and see what is inside. For the repository, I define it interface, which is returning pager. And pager is generics, a generic interface. Int, it's ID of a page. So ID of a page doesn't have to be integer, so it could be whatever you put, which is very flexible. And repo, it's a data type that is listed on the page. Right? So this is definition of what it is returning, and this is implementation. I'm overwriting that part, and I'm creating pager by calling constructor. So quite brute force, but in order to create it, I need page config object. Otherwise, how would I do it? Paging and page source factory. Page source factory. Page source factory. Okay, I need actually two things. Paging config and repos paging source.
So the config shows how many objects to load in one go.
Let's see. Config is actually a library object, so I didn't have to write it. And in this case, I fixed page size to 20, so to stay consistent with asking 20 items each time.
Each time, so before we're fetching for more.
Yes.
So what about paging source factory? What is
This I had to create this class because you see it is related to repos API, so it has to be customized. What is factory? Factory it's object creating other objects. In this case, factory is lambda function because we have a curly braces. Yeah. Default parameter it is not used for lambda function, but return what is returned by this lambda function is supposed to be factory. No. Sorry, no. It's supposed to be object because it's produced by this lambda function. So how do I produce it? By calling constructor. So factory, it's this, in this case, is lambda function calling constructor.
So in this case, calling the constructor.
Yeah.
Checking for this.
Yes. And indeed, it has to be factory because in the textbook, it was bug. They created object elsewhere. I believe it was just assigned to the constant. And they put object variable name here, referring to that object. So it wasn't factory creating the object. It will be always the same object provided. And that was causing crashes. When I read crash case and Google it and say, yeah, it has to be new object created. So we cannot reuse this object. It has to be given as a factory.
So this just defines what type of object this would be?
No, this defines how to create paging source.
Okay, so this defines how to create paging source.
Yeah. In this case, I'm calling constructor.
Okay,
So paging source, it's an object that, you see, it is customized. It is,
right there.
yeah. I forgot where it is. It is in the same package, so I didn't have to import. It is here. No? Repos paging source. Here it is. Repos paging source. Okay. Yes. Repos paging source. Repos paging source receives repos API as a parameter. This is why we gave it there. And it's not injected because I call it constructor right in place. Okay. And it is implementing, so this is inheritance, but this is interface, implementing paging source for int and repo. When we implement interface, we need to provide some functions. In this case, it's function load and function get refresh key, get refresh key. What the hell it means? I forgot. 1 second. It's returning null. I think it is, yeah, from which point to refresh this part. In this case, it is refreshing entire piece. So essentially, it's a page where to start refreshing.
Where to start refreshing?
Yeah, so it is refreshing entire piece when we call refresh.
It makes sense because you only would refresh if it's not to begin with, correct?
Yeah. No, null, it is default. Null, it is the first name of the first page. Okay, this is how paging numbering started. So it will become apparent when we read this piece. Okay. So I'm overwriting. This is where refreshing starts, and null it is assumed first page. Here it is. Params. Params are given by the system. It is current state of this refreshing. So let's look here carefully. Key, it is current page. It is current page, but if it is first page, it is null. So when it is null, I will use next page is 1 because current page is 0. Yeah, null it's assumed 0. If I use numbers, okay. Why do they use null? Because technically page can be a string instead of number. Remember that this pair stuff is generic type. So this is actually page numbering. It's my choice to use integer. But this, it is generic object. So in order to mark that this page is first, instead of 0, they have to use null because it's not necessarily number. So when our first page is, when it is the first page, I'm saying next page will be 1.
Okay, so in this case, since you use int, hence why you're defining the first page to get the very first page. But had you used string, it would have been something, you wouldn't need to use that.
Yeah, I would have to deal with strings for
every
that.
Time for every refresh thing. So
yes, and I will also have to maintain logic how it would be page after that.
Yeah, exactly. And that makes it extremely complicated. It's easier
Not necessary. It depends what kind of numbering is there. I don't know. If it is string but storing number inside, it would be equivalent, right? So, and this is where I print this message that I'm about to ask for the page, right? And this is actually asking for the page. Remember that a repos API get repos is giving you the object. So see, repos API, see, is giving response object, and response object contains, response object, response object contains items, which is list of repos. So technically I define it repo and response object, which is list of repos. So in order to get a list, I have to do dot repos on response object. Going back, API get that dot repos will give me a list of repos. Okay, so this is list of repos.
So each object will be, sorry, one object. Each page will be considered a list in that sense.
Yeah.
Each list of 20.
Yes.
Got it.
So this is how I pass it to API. Remember, I made it parameter artificial 20, so I have to put it. But it is hard-coded 20. I'll pass it to API, and this will be a list of repos. And where it is used. Currently, it is assigned to parameter. Just variable. And I'm returning load result page. And page contains this list of repos, contains previous key, and previous key, if next page is 1, previous key is null. So it is the first one. And next page, otherwise, if it is not equal to 1, next page is, no, previous page, it is next minus 1. No, previous key. Previous key is next minus 1, and next key, it is next plus 1. Okay, let's think about it. It does work, so it just has to be right.
Sorry, so over here, what is this line of code is particularly doing?
It is printing error message that we received the data.
Oh, okay, that's
I remember what we saw at the bottom, nothing else.
Yeah. So that's what that's for.
Yeah.
Okay. So logging there, okay.
And this is logic of telling the system what is the previous page, what is next page, so it's clear during load scrolling. So next page we started with 1, but assume the current is actual number. It starts from 0.
So over here the data is, well, repos. Right?
It is list of this repo object.
Yeah, so list of these.
Yeah.
And so the previous key defines what the page is.
Yeah.
For the page.
Yes, if next page is 1, it means previous is null. If next page is, otherwise next page minus 1 is previous one.
Yeah.
And next key, it is next page plus 1. So yeah, whatever.
This will take some time for me to process.
Yeah, it is. If it works, it's probably right.
Yeah. No, it works. Okay.
Yeah.
Just for me, it's going to take some
Maybe the word next page is just wrong, when we should say current page instead of it or something like this.
Either way,
Yeah, so this is how it is taking care of this
the loading.
loading part.
Okay.
And there is no other logic here. This is it.
That's surprising.
Yeah.
It's pretty simple.
Yeah, it is simple because there's no database part at all. If we try to push it into database before we display it on the screen, this is definitely will be more complicated. Also, we have no way to change page size because of the way how it is from the web server. But if we use this database, maybe it is adjustable, but not here.
Really? So it depends on the server, and hence why you're only picking 20 objects?
No, you can put 10, it will work, but you cannot change 10.
Oh, you cannot change.
This is how I started discussing. When you ask page 20 of 10 objects, it needs to start list somewhere. So if it is page 20 of 10 objects, it will count 19 pages before of 10 objects. So it will be first item on your page will be 191. Okay.
191.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is how it figures out where to start, where the data should start.
Start from. Okay.
Because otherwise, whatever, server doesn't know how many items in front of the data. Right? It doesn't have to be 20, it can be 10, but it has to be always the same.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense. You're just defining how the data is
Mhm.
being fetched
Mhm.
in that sense. And from the server, and it is fixed. So it doesn't. So if you're asking 30 per page,
Mhm.
it still needs to count those previous ones to get to the next.
Yes, otherwise there's no way.
Yeah.
It is parameter, and different clients ask for different page size, so it has to count.
Mm-hmm. It makes sense. It makes sense. So everyone can use it in their own way.
Yes. Unfortunately, I hard-coded 20 in different places on the code, which is kind of naughty, because if I change it in one place, I really have to change it in other places. Yeah. It would be nicer if I just define constant and use that constant.
It makes sense. It makes a simpler deal with.
So best way is probably define constant and use the constant, but I didn't. Oops. One more thing to fix, it is to change that message that happens on the top to make it pop up, because this is definitely not nicest.
Are you going to update it over the weekend, or are you just going to leave it as
I will leave it as it is.
Okay, no, that's fine. I'm just curious.
But the reason is that I want to prepare a nice example for next week, and will pretty much take 2 days, probably, as you. This textbook was published during weekend, really the weekend that happened.
This weekend.
Yeah. So I didn't actually had much time to study it, and it appears like it has some nice examples that can be used here. Especially, probably first one. After this, it becomes complicated, and we don't have time for this. And so I need to study 3 chapters for that example. And it is chat example, so it is quite interesting. So
I'm sorry, but sorry to cut you off. Everything else makes sense on whatever is needed. So the view model, the screen, the loading, the error repository, how you're getting all the data, and how you're organizing it, how you're displaying it. But what's the point of retrofit here? That's the whole topic for today.
Okay, retrofit module. I remember in other examples, I just had the data module code.
Yes.
It is just different name. It tells the system, the injection system, how to create retrofit object, to put it here, and tells how to create API object that will be injected into repository.
Okay.
So this is API object is needed in the repository. implementation of the repository. Oh, you see, it needs to inject API object. So we need to provide instruction how to create it. Yeah. So modules give instructions to injection system how to create those objects. In this, when we use inject in front of constructor, it is also instruction how to create this object. In this case, a remote pages repository is created by injection of repos API into the constructor. But this instruction is how to create remote pages repository, right? Logically. But my view model expects injection of paged repository. And this is interface. Somehow I need to link interface with implementation. And for that, I have another module here that is linking interface with implementation. Previously, I had only one module because I was doing shortcut. I was telling, like, if I want object, for example, paged repository, just call constructor of remote paged repository. So everything was in one module before for compactness. And now it is in two modules to show that we can create another module which is abstract class that is linking objects to implementations, interfaces to implementations of those interfaces.
Okay, so you use that. So
Yeah, it is just for extra piece of theory and no other reason.
it's for cleanliness, correct?
No.
No.
It is to explain there are two kinds of modules. One which is object that tells explicitly how to create stuff, and the other one which is abstract class that tells relation between objects and interfaces and implementations. You see, this is marked binds, and it is binding interface and implementation. But this one is marked provides, which is actually providing a given object. In this case, by calling builder, and in this case, by calling create or retrofit method. This is indeed given the object, but the other one is just linking interface and implementation. And in order to make implementation injectable, it had to be inject constructor part. Previously, we didn't have it. This code exists only in two examples, this one and restaurant example. A restaurant example has more than one module, and it has code like this.
More than one, hence why you have more.
Yeah. A restaurant example has module for database, module to get data from network, and also module like this for repository that is linking interfaces and implementations of the interfaces.
So that's the point of the repository, so linking interfaces and implementation.
Yeah, it is a point of given module. Yeah, a point of creating this module.
That's the point.
Yeah, but defining interface to make it replaceable potentially, but there's no need to technically. We can totally just use a repository, just this, and do not use interface at all. Why not? And it will inject it, no problem. No problem.
Hence why I was asking, like, what was the reason to make an interface to begin with? You could just go directly through.
A good point. It is to make implementations replaceable. That's the only reason. But there is no.
Yes. Sorry, yes.
Yeah, but it's no other reason.
Yeah,
If I have.
Only in this case.